Hello there everyone, how you doing today? I hope you're all well. Today we're going to r/nosleep to read a horror story called I've Always Known My Family Wasn't Human. Now my fiance wants to meet them. Written by David Hollow. If you enjoy, remember to do the YouTube interaction stuff. Now let's get started. I'm writing this because my wife is packing. In less than 12 hours, we're driving to my parents' house for the first time since I left. She thinks it's overdue, and I've run out of excuses that don't make me sound cruel or insane. I told her I've had a difficult childhood. My family and I aren't close. I did not tell her the truth. I don't know what will happen if she sees them for what they really are. Growing up, my family never looked human to me, not even a little. That's important to understand. When you're a child, you don't interrogate reality. You accept it. You learn what things look like, how they behave, and what you're supposed to ignore. You don't ask why your mother's face sometimes opens the wrong way when she eats, any more than you ask why the sky is blue. It's just how things are. I didn't know my family was strange. I thought they were simply mine. But I never dared to question my parents after I saw what they really are. The first time I noticed something was different, I was 6 or 7. My sister and I found a stray kitten behind our house in the snow. It was half-starved, all ribs and matted fur, shaking so badly I could feel it through my shirt when I held it. We hid it in the shed, fed it scraps, gave it water in a cracked bowl. My sister named it Whiskers. Original, I know. Every day it got a bit stronger, warmer, and the light of life started to reappear in its eyes. I remember feeling proud, like we were doing something good, but it became louder. One night I went to check on Whiskers. I wish I hadn't. I wish we had left him in the snow, because whatever death waited for him there would have been gentler than the one that followed. I checked the entire shed with no sign of the cat. I returned into the warm embrace of my home. But before I went upstairs I heard a meow. Then a crunch. It sounded like chewing. Careful chewing. Wet and rhythmic. Like someone taking their time with something they didn't want to waste. I followed the sound to the kitchen. My father was standing at the counter, back to me. The overhead light was on. His shoulders were too wide, sloping strangely, like something heavy was hanging beneath his skin. As I watched, his head separated. Not snapped or broke, it unfolded. The face split vertically, skin drawing back in thick, muscular layers, revealing rows of pale, flexible teeth that worked inward instead of up and down. Something small disappeared between them. I knew at that moment. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I stood there and watched until my mother's hand touched my shoulder and sent a sharp bolt through my spine. For a split second it wasn't a hand at all. Too firm, too broad. The pressure wrong. Before it softened, reshaping itself into the familiar, gentle weight of a mother's touch from behind. "Go back to bed," she whispered. My memory of that night is foggy, but I'm certain I saw her face pulling itself back together. Features smoothing and settling into the shape everyone else in the world recognizes as human. The next morning, my sister asked where Whiskers was. My mother didn't hesitate. "It must have run off," she says gently. "Strays do that." My sister cried, and I lost my innocence. That was the moment something in me closed. Not fear, but understanding. The rules became clear. You don't keep things, you don't draw attention, you don't bring people home. After that, I noticed a lot more. The way my parents' faces would briefly lose structure when they thought no one was watching. Features sliding, eyes shifting, position before settling. How my sister could stretch her jaw too far when she yawned, then snap it back with a click that made my teeth ache. How meat disappeared faster than it should at dinner. How plates were always clean. But when neighbors visited, my family was flawless. I learned to watch them watching others, and that was when they were the most convincing. Smiles held just long enough. movements measured, human manners worn like clothing. I didn't have friends growing up, not really. I was afraid of sleepovers, afraid of birthdays, afraid someone would stay too late and see something they shouldn't. When I tried telling kids at school just once in middle school, they laughed. Words spread fast. I was the weird kid, the liar, the one with monster parents. I never told anyone ever again. I left for college the moment I could. Different city, different life. I didn't come back for the holidays. I had excuses ready. Finals, work, money, distance. Years passed. I met my fiancée 2 years ago. She's kind in a way that feels intentional, not accidental. She believes people are what they show you. She believes in family, and she knows I'm distant from mine. Lately, she's been asking more questions. Thanksgiving is coming. She wants us to visit my parents. She says it matters, that she wants to understand where I come from before we get married, and I have run out of excuses. Tonight, she asked me directly if I was ashamed of them. To be honest, I didn't know how to answer, because the truth is I'm terrified of them, and I'm terrified that if she meets them, she won't see what they really are. I'm posting this because I don't know what to say to her. I've spent my life convinced my family are monsters wearing human skin. I've structured everything around that belief. Every distance I've kept, every silence. But there's something I've never allowed myself to consider. If they were able to live among people undetected, if they raised children without anyone noticing, if they could teach me how to blend in, what does that say about me? I don't remember ever being hungry like they were, but sometimes when I'm alone, I catch myself staring at my reflection a second too long, waiting to see if it moves first. So I need advice from anyone willing to believe me, even a little. Do I tell my fiancée the truth and risk losing her? Or do I stay silent to take her home for Thanksgiving? And find out once and for all whether I was wrong about my family or wrong about myself. Now we're moving on to another horror story because we have enough time for that today. This one was short enough, so let's get started. I felt chosen in my living room. It didn't make me feel scared, it made me feel right. The living room was the only place it happened. It started out of nowhere one evening. The rest of the house stayed normal, but the moment I crossed into that room, the air thickened and the temperature sank suddenly, like the house was drawing a slow, deliberate breath around me. It wasn't sudden, it crept in, a cold that didn't touch my skin so much as it did my thoughts. At first it felt like dread, a warning pressure in my chest, but underneath it was something else, something intoxicating. My heart didn't race, it slowed. My mind didn't scatter, it sharpened. I felt heavier. Like gravity, I decided I mattered more there. I felt important in a way no mirror had ever given me. I started going in on purpose. I would sit in the dark and let the cold soak into me. The shadows didn't behave. They leaned towards me. They thickened in corners where they shouldn't exist. The ceiling felt higher and closer at the same time, like the room was folding inward around me. When I caught my reflection in the blank TV screen, my face looked different, not distorted, commanding. My mouth curved slightly upward, and I didn't remember telling it to. The feeling wasn't fear anymore. It was power. Not loud, not violent. Quiet, ancient, and patient. It filled my chest until my breathing felt ceremonial. My thoughts became crueler and clearer at the same time. I felt like I could see through people, through their little reasons and soft lies. I felt above them. I felt permitted to think things I never used to think. I started smiling at those thoughts. And that's when I knew it wasn't just happening to me. It was changing me. The room encouraged it. When I resisted the feeling, the cold deepened, and the walls seemed to press inward. When I relaxed into it, the cold softened, and something like approval settled over me. It felt like standing in a cathedral built for something that hated light, and had finally found something worth shaping. I then stayed longer. The doorway began to feel far away, my legs thick when I tried to leave, like wading through syrup. The walls sounded close, like they were listening. I felt drawn to them, not violently but curiously, like something behind them had leaned forward first. Once I placed my hand against the paint, and it felt warm beneath the surface, not room temperature, body temperature. When I pulled away, there was a faint indentation where my palm had been. That was when the thought formed fully. This wasn't fear. It was an offer. It didn't promise safety or comfort. It promised elevation. It made me feel like I could be more than human. Like something old and heavy was lending me its posture and waiting to see if I would keep it. My ego swelled in that room until it felt holy. I felt chosen. I felt deserving. I felt like the rules bent slightly when I breathed. But every time the feeling peaked, another thought followed it. What will you give me? It didn't say it out loud. It shaped the question inside my chest. What part of you is unnecessary? What part of you can be burned away? What will you leave behind to become what you are meant to be? At night, the walls looked thinner. The shadows pooled at the baseboards like they were awaiting their turn. I stood up without remembering and deciding to, and walked towards the blank wall behind the TV. The paint looked soft. The darkness around it pulsed faintly, like something breathing through it. I felt the urge to step forward and let it take me, not into the wall, but into whatever waited where the wall was pretending to exist. I then stopped myself. That was the last night I sat in the living room. But the feeling did not stay there. Now I catch myself grinning at things that used to bother me. I feel taller in empty rooms. Sometimes I wake up standing in front of other walls, my forehead inches from the surface, my breath fogging faintly against the paint. Sometimes I dream that I finally accept the offer and feel something slide into me like a second spine. I didn't think the living room was haunted. I think it was a mouth, and I think whatever tasted me is still deciding how much of me it wants. Because the worst part isn't that I'm afraid of what it will take. The worst part is that when I felt that cold power rise in my chest, I still want to know what it would give me if I let it finish. Now, I forgot to say the author at the beginning of the story, but this was written by Machine1892 on Reddit. Do check them out. That is the end of today's video. If you enjoyed, remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Check out my streaming content as well, and I'll try to get more horror content your way. Now, I will see you all next time. Bye bye.